My name is Lori Troe, 740 South 9th Street. I just have something to say to several of you commissioners and mayor. So to Commissioner Hoppick Davis, A, and Mayor Ryan, do you remember who you are supposed to be working for? It seems to me that you do not. You were elected to work for the betterment of the city of Salina and all of our citizens. You do not just work for the deep money pockets that paid to get you elected so they can get special perks. In the last 9 months, I have been both appalled by and ashamed of the four of you. The actions that have been made by you, the words that have come out of your mouths, and the decisions that you have made prove to me over and over that you care nothing for the city of Salina as a whole and the majority of the people you were elected to represent. As a city commissioner, you need to be the type of individual that A, listens to all viewpoints of all citizens, B, studies and researches each item that comes before you, C, makes decisions that are fair to all citizens, and D, puts their personal beliefs and feelings aside when serving as a city commissioner. I implore you to change your mind, thoughts, and your actions while serving as a city commissioner to work for all citizens of our great city.
Are there others that would like to address the commission?
After that, I'm going to be a pussycat. My name is Bruce Moore. I live at 142 Sites, and I'm here again about the animal shelter ongoing controversy. I think it's helpful if we look back and see how we got to this position so that we don't get here again. When the city inherited the animal shelter from the county in the divorce, you got something you hadn't had in a while, a functioning animal shelter with animals that needed to be fed, housed, and medicated, a whole new bunch of employees, and a bunch of statutes, rules, and regulations you'd not complied with for a long time. And you had nobody trained to run the boat. Dion hired Vanessa because she knew how to run the operation. She was experienced in animal welfare. She worked at our shelter both as a volunteer and as a paid animal control officer, and she had experience in running a shelter. He said, go make the shelter better, and she did. She did really well under Dion's leadership, and when Dion left and Steve Harsky took over, she continued to excel because Steve recognized in her that she had passion, she had drive, she had ambition, and she had the knowledge to take the shelter to the next level. He encouraged her, and the shelter continued to grow and become a model and a beacon across the region. The only thing that's changed is her supervision. And maybe it's the quality of her supervision that needs to be questioned and inspected here rather than her conduct and her performance. This shelter is not your typical business enterprise. They have no control over the number of animals that come in or the number of animals that go out. When they come in, no matter how inconvenient it may be. And they have to be cared for. They have to be tended to. They have to be medicated. They have to be watched. They have to be domesticated. They have to be adopted out. It's a lot of work. And you need somebody that knows that operation to run the operation. You don't need a Bean County bureaucrat. It's not your typical business model. If you think that having Vanessa go is going to solve things, you are sadly mistaken. This shelter is not going to do as well under the Bean County bureaucrats as it's done under Vanessa. They don't have the drive, they don't have the vision, they don't have the goals of making the shelter better. They only want to grow their resume for a few years and move on to another city. If you think that replacing Vanessa is going to be easy, I'm sorry, Mr. Ryan, am I boring you? I apologize. If you think replacing Vanessa is going to be easy, then you're sadly mistaken. Finding somebody with that drive, ambition, and knowledge is not going to be easy to find, particularly what you pay. If you think getting her out is going to solve anything, all you've done is sentence the shelter to a slow, lingering, dying demise. And that's just not fair to the animals and certainly not fair to the city. Secondly, there was an email you should have received back in June from a William Chevy, who had a number of insights to share about the the crisis then being presented to the city council, you're being asked to retroactively approve increases in spending authority over an animal cruelty case. And Vanessa supervisor knew about that all along. They didn't convey it up to chain of command again. Maybe it's the supervision that needs to be looked at here rather than the conduct of Vanessa. Her conduct has been recognized by a district court judge as being reasonable and appropriate under the circumstances. So, that email was supposed to just be a shot across the bow to get you folks thinking and talking and maybe asking some questions and not just accepting Mr. Gage's explanation for how you got here. The identity of Mr. Chevy wasn't supposed to be an issue, wasn't supposed to be a distraction. No, at the last meeting, John Blanchard told you he was William Chevy. Well, I'm William Chevy too. William Chevy represents the voice of people that are concerned with the trajectory of the animal shelter in this city. Under the last two supervisors, Vanessa and the shelter have soared. Under the current supervision, the shelter is in the tank. Have the current supervisors done anything to alleviate the manpower shortage they created by lopping the head off that organization? Have they been over there once? Have they rededicated any other parks and rec personnel to help cover the shortage? No. Have they inquired about the mental well-being, the morale of those employees? No. Let me tell you what happens when people get overworked and their morale is down. Accidents happen. People lose focus. They get hurt. If you don't have supervisors in place that recognize that and want to address it, then you don't have supervision. And that's what they have right now, no supervision. So William Chevy wasn't supposed to be the point. William Chevy was just supposed to be a mechanism to get the word in front of you. If it didn't work, then we, William Chevys of the world, apologize. But that wasn't supposed to be the point. The point was to be ask questions, inquire. Don't accept at face value what somebody is handing you, particularly if it's a bureaucrat trying to cover his own backs. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is John Blanchard. I live at 1117 State Street. I guess it's a pussycat is a hard act to follow, but Mayor Ryan, what was it that you called me, a feral cat? Is that correct? So I'll just be a feral cat here today. I want to talk about what level of importance all of you put on this animal cruelty matter, because on June 25th, none of you really wanted to talk about it in public. I suspect, and I mentioned it last week, I think you guys talked about it in your executive session for 85 minutes. I think you talked about the spending authority being exceeded. I think you talked about actions that staff and the city attorney took. I think you talked about, obviously, I think it would be within reason to talk about whether it was constitutional or not. I think you talked about that on June 18th. What I did hear was a lot of speculation on the part of the former city manager, who I think quite frequently liked to fancy himself an amateur lawyer. And if you go back and look at the videotape from June 25th, you're going to see a lot of the judge is going to have to weigh this and the judge is going to have to weigh that, based on the decision made by, it looks like, because lack of any other credible evidence shows that the city attorney and I'm just going to say the office, not the person, is the entity that made the decision of the direction that the animal cruelty case is going to take. The part that I find troubling was on this Friday, there was a hearing because the defendants had made a motion to dismiss. And although all the conversation on the 25th centered around a lot of it, whether or not this statute was constitutional or not, and I don't want to misrepresent the words, but I believe the words were by the city attorney that while he felt he was no expert in the criminal statutes and proceedings, that the Chapter 60 civil procedure was Law School 101. And I just haven't, I would hope that you guys would ask the question, but you haven't. Have you sought an attorney general's opinion of whether or not the Chapter 60 civil proceedings are unconstitutional within the statute, because if I were a legislator, I'd be a little bit offended by the conversation that took place on the 25th. Also, I would have expected that at least, well, one of you, Commissioner Hodges, was at the hearing. And it's not news now, but the trial is moving forward. Okay, so all this speculation about it being unconstitutional and so far evidently hasn't gotten the attention of the Judge Young. So I would just ask that, and I did see one of you, Commissioner Hoppick, I saw you in the hallway after the hearing. And I wish you would have been up there for that hearing. Because you guys say that you can't say anything here, but there are certainly ways that you can show that you do have an open mind. One way of having an open mind would have been to show up at that trial, hear what the arguments were for dismissal, and realize that not only did Vanessa Cowie do what she was hired to do, but that the Salina County Sheriff deputies did their jobs very well as well. So disappointed that none of you thought it was important enough to make it there. Disappointed that, because it was being argued that there were questions of constitutionality, that, and it was only 45 minutes long, that we didn't have some sort of representation. Was the third-party counsel that you're hiring to look at this matter, was that third-party counsel, to your knowledge, did they attend that hearing?
Yes.
They did, okay. I didn't want to speculate because I don't know who that is. Anyway, it was just disappointing that you weren't there, because I don't know if Chapter 60 criminal procedure is law school 101, and I don't know what you guys talked about back there for 85 minutes, but I can tell you this. Governing body 101, you know what that, CORA? The CORA laws, the COMA laws, that's governing body 101. So, some of the comments that you made, Commissioner Hoppy, tend to show your hand a little bit, that you guys talked about an awful lot more in there than just the statute. So, thank you.
Are there others that would like to address the commission?
Hi, Nicole Crow, 231 South Park. Just here, going to continue to come here until you guys do it. I want you to reinstate Vanessa. The animal shelter is the one suffering. Their staff is suffering over there. The volunteers are suffering. They need leadership, and there's no leadership in Chris Cotton. He needs to go.
Get rid of it.